7:10. It's Thursday morning to you. For many of us, the true horror of gang violence was revealed by the tragic murder of Rhys Jones in Liverpool. A report out today says as many as 50,000 teenagers are members of gangs in Britain. That is an enormous number. The research, headed up by former Conservative leader Ian Duncan-Smith, says the problem should be tackled by targeting the gang leaders. Well, Elaine Wilcox has been talking to a former gang member in Manchester who started carrying a gun at the age of 14. We're using an actor's voice to hide his identity.
It's like a war zone, it really is, except people say there's not been shootings for a while. But it doesn't mean the guns aren't being used, it just means they're not getting reported. You've got to carry a gun if you're anyone around here, otherwise someone's just going to pull one on you.
Have you got the gun with you now?
Yeah, I've always got it with me.
What kind of gun's that?
Yeah, it's a 2.2, it's not loaded.
So it just looks like a torch, but it's a weapon?
Yeah, it's a gun. Anyone can go to France and Spain and come back with half a dozen of these.
How much did you pay for it?
It cost 17 euros.
And have you seen very young kids with these kind of weapons?
Yeah.
How young?
Like 13 or 14. Barely out of nappies.
And when you saw Rhys Jones's death in Liverpool, that's someone carrying a gun, prepared to use a gun, didn't care where they were firing?
Yeah, well that's an irresponsible person, but unfortunately a little kid got shot and killed.
So do you see a time when you won't have to carry that gun?
Not in the near future. Not whilst I'm around here.
And we're joined now by former gang member Tracey Miller, who can tell us much more about it. Tracey, good morning to you.
Good morning.
You were actually shot, weren't you?
Yeah, I was shot at the age of 16.
Was that a way out, or did you get further into gangs after that?
Well, obviously being shot, it was a serious experience, but at the same time I took it as, okay, maybe I've got more street cred now because I have been shot. I know what's coming, what pain to expect, so now I'm going to be more notorious.
Did you, how did you get into it in the first place?
Basically, for me, getting into gangs was just a matter of I felt oppressed at home, nobody to talk to. So obviously, you get out there, you meet people, youngsters like yourself, they've got the same kind of problems, so you all connect. It all makes sense. You're like a little family. So
if there's no purpose in a community, if there's nothing to do, if there's no family structure, this is open to young people.
Children are byproducts of their environment. Parents need to understand this. Before you have a child, think about how you're living, how you're going to bring up this child. A lot of children are being dragged up. It's sad.
Yeah, so that would be the way that you would tackle it. Because at the moment, we've got this big report out today that suggests different things. I don't know if you're familiar with conclusions that they've reached, but one of them is to target the leaders of these gangs. Presumably, everybody knows who they are.
Okay, when it comes to what I call the hurry-come-up crew, these are youngsters that are not very serious, they're not dangerous, but they want to be little rugrats and get involved in all sorts of stuff. That will work for them, but the more serious types of gang members and stuff, that won't work because you haven't necessarily got one leader that's delegating the whole crew. You've got many man them that's serious within that collective, and they're all serious types, so they're not going to sit down and be delegated by one person.
If you were the boss, and I know you do a lot of work around this area, if you were the boss, what would be the first step that you would take?
For me personally, and thinking back to how I used to be and when I used to run around with a gun and stuff, I think zero tolerance should be zero tolerance. Back then, if I knew I had CO-19 units waiting to put a hole in my head, I would have thought twice about carrying a gun. So if it's zero tolerance, make it be zero tolerance.
So that's the firearms unit, and there is respect for those boys and girls?
Definitely. They are much needed.
So are you saying that instilling fear into gang members and to the kids who might get into... Do you think that that would actually stop them becoming gang members in the first place?
Even the baddest of bad men do not want to counteract with police. They don't want to get shot in the head by a trained marksman who's going to have more ammunition than you could ever possibly have, so they would cut it out.
Why haven't the police done this? They know where these gangs exist, how they exist, who they are and how they live. Why hasn't it been stopped? How come we've got to a point where there's 50,000 children, in effect?
That is a good question. Maybe a lot of gangsters have been driven underground and they work in different ways, so maybe it's not been brought to the highlight like it is now.
Yeah.
It's not been in the media and stuff as much as well, so now they feel the need to do something about it. Even famous people are getting killed and stuff, so it's a big topic now.
Tracey, thank you ever so much for coming in this morning and
talking about it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Well, it's just gone 7:15. Let's get the news headlines for you now. Here's Penny.
Thank you very much. Good morning. The Prime Minister will be asked to explain decisions he made on the economy when he takes part in a question and answer session with senior MPs today on the recession and failings within the banking sector. Urgent action from the government's needed to stop the rise in the number of armed gangs on British streets. That's according to a new report which estimates that as many as 50,000 teenagers are now